Welcome. We have with us today a panel of excellent faculty from Sam Houston State University. And what we want to talk to you a little bit about is to discuss what some of the emotions that children, teenagers, and adolescents might be going through with the current coronavirus situation. Of course, we have a lot of schools that are out. We have a lot of resources that are kind of in limbo right now, but we want to let people know that a lot of things still are the same and still are here to help you. And so with me today on our panel, we have myself. My name is Dr. Matt Fuller. I'm an associate professor of educational leadership, and I'm the director of the Center for Assessment, Research, and Educational Safety, or CARES, at Sam Houston State University.
And I am Dr. Sina Makai Sullivan. I'm one of the assistant professors of counselor education. I'm a licensed professional counselor and supervisor. I am also a registered play therapist and supervisor, and I'm the director of clinics for the counseling department.
Hello, good morning. My name is Dr. Courtney Banks. I am an assistant professor as well at Sam Houston in the psychology and philosophy department. Particularly, my specialization is in school psychology. I am a licensed psychologist and also a licensed specialist in school psychology.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tim Brown. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Counselor Education. I'm also a licensed professional counselor, a certified school counselor, and a national certified counselor.
Great, thank you all. And I want to say I'm really honored to be a part of this panel. These are some of our top-notch scholars that we offer at Sam Houston State, and so thank you for taking time to help us all. I want to just kind of bracket our conversation a little bit today and offer what some of our assumptions about the context, the current COVID-19 situation are. We're taking the assumption that in this talk, we're focusing on families with school children, maybe churches, hospitals, other places. This has widely affected normal operations and has for weeks and will continue for at least a little while longer to affect normal operations. And so there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of economic instability right now. Families have been asked to engage in remote learning, and that's new for a lot of them, and as well social distancing, and doing all this in a relatively quick fashion has really thrown a lot of families for a loop. And so we're also recognizing that there's varying degrees of loss and stress in this. And so not everybody, one of the key messages is not everyone is going to progress through this situation in the same steps, in the same fashion, in the same speed. But we just want to recognize that we're giving you some help, just a few cues, a few tips, if you will, to help in this situation. We also recognize that children are observant. And so one of our first strategies is to not try to hide a lot of this from children because they are hearing it from people. I have had that with my own children, and I've experienced that firsthand here. So we're really trying to help you engage in ways that you can talk to your children and work with them through these situations. So some of the first things that first question we really want to tackle is, what are some of the emotions children may be feeling right now? And to that, I'm going to turn to Dr. Banks to give us a little insight into this area.
Okay, well, similar to what Dr. Fuller was explaining, the first things you see there, children, adolescents may feel lost in, number one, their routine, their schedule, not being able to go to school, lost in just their identity that they have with their friends. As we know, especially with adolescents, sometimes adolescents prefer to be around peers a lot more at that age, and they prefer maybe at sometimes to show themselves in a variety of more aspects than they would maybe at home. So that loss. Stress. So stress of, I'm thinking about high school students as well as maybe 8th graders. Am I going to graduate? Am I going to, again, still see my friends? What does this look like, this online class, as far as grades? What is my teacher going to do? Stress within the home of, again, just the schedule, similar to what Dr. Fuller just mentioned. I'm supposed to be doing my work, but my parents are in a meeting. Children stress. When can I have some family time? Fear that this is going to remain the same. Fear that I'm not going to see my friends anymore, right? possible fear of I'm not understanding my schoolwork. Maybe my parents are also kind of confused. So fear I'm not gonna pass this semester. As was mentioned before, children are very observant, right? And so often what times, we're going to be talking a little bit more about this later, but often what times we want to model that this is the unknown in a certain stance, right? It's going to be a variety of emotions. Going real quick to number 5, children, adolescents, adults, right? We all have our basic needs, of course, of food, hygiene, safety, if you will. But then also we have this, everyone has this sense and not physical, excuse me, they have a need of love and support, and kind of what that looks like now that, again, the routines are not the exact same. Just because my parents are in a meeting or my mom or dad is now at work, I mean, do they still love me? What does that look like? That sense of purpose, again, going back to school, going back to friends. What is my purpose? I'm at home all the time. So what am I supposed to do, right? They want to be happy. So we're going to talk a little bit later about like some things to help them to know in the midst of this, you can still be happy. You can still find some times of comfort. And of course, those social connections. We keep hearing the word social distancing, and then we hear right followed that social distancing should not be social isolation, and that's true. And so what's happening a lot of times is maybe teachers as well as parents are Zooming and having FaceTime with other family members they cannot see, as well as their teachers.
If I could chime in a little bit there, particularly about security, safety, and control. I've had a lot of consultations with parents. Children are feeling really upset. They're feeling a disruption in their life. And a lot of that has to do with a complete loss of control, especially adolescents. Adolescents have been thrown out of their environment and they've been put into the home, and they've lost a lot of the control that they had over their lives. And control is a need like food and water. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about this, but how can we return some control to the kids?
And I would add to that, I think you guys summarized it really well about the feeling of loss and stress and fear of things changing and not being the same. At the same time, in my private practice that I do on the side, I am seeing a lot of kids right now who are struggling with the fear of, am I going to lose a loved one? Am I going to die? Is something bad going to happen to me or someone that I know? And I think we also need to consider that for any age group at this time, because especially if the kids or teens are hearing the news or their parents discussing these issues, they are going to be fearful of someone potentially dying or getting really sick.
Great, thank you all. Again, continuing on this element, I want to kind of highlight a little bit a group I really care about, high school seniors right now. This is a group, if you look at this cohort of students, they were born around 9/11 and they're graduating with coronavirus. And in between, they've had the Columbia accident, Columbine, Katrina, Harvey, you name it. They've had a lot. And so this is a group that I think we really need to be attentive to their emotional needs. When we talk about emotional needs, we kind of categorize these 4 broad emotions. Again, these aren't all of them, but happiness, sadness, fear, anxiety, and anger. And so these are not all of the emotions someone will feel, but they're just 4 kind of broad groups. And I'm wondering if you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about, relative to coronavirus and relative to what you're seeing right now, what are some of the emotions children in these 4 areas are exhibiting?
I would say just within my own home, I don't have any high school kids, but I have a 3rd grader and a 1st grader, and just the anger. Yesterday, my daughter was just becoming really upset that I wish things could go back the way it used to be. This is getting boring. I'm tired of this. And of course, like I said, parents, not just myself, but I'm seeing the other parents have meetings, and whether they go to work or they are working from home, and this is not how it's supposed to be. And so definitely that frustration and us being able to kind of talk about, you're right, you know, I mean, not sugarcoat, right? You're right. This is very frustrating. As well as, though at the same time, happiness, because time with your family. I know it says that right there on the slide, where, you know, we're as a family creating, you know, going for walks, being able to just spend some, you know, quality moments together and change up the routine, right? Stay up a little bit later, you know, Monday through Friday, right? Things that they may have, we're not able to do on a regular basis.
I'm seeing a lot of that same frustration with online platforms. You know, a lot of children trying to navigate multiple passwords and, you know, things that as we as adults irritate us in the office any day of the week. Now our kids are getting that in spades. I'm hearing a lot of frustration and anger about loss of school traditions, like, you know, this was going to be my best baseball season, and this was, you know, this was my prom, and this was going to be the year I was, you know, really going to graduate, or I needed those extra few points to bring my GPA up, you know, stuff like that. So there is a lot of frustration right now and anger. As Dr. Banks said, I'm also seeing a lot of happiness, gratitude. You know, I'm seeing a lot of people dealing with health issues that they may be having in the community or in their families right now. And so we want to try to be attuned to that. Dr. Brown, were you going to jump in and say something?
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about resiliency. Resiliency is that idea that negative things can happen in our lives and we can just bounce back. And in a normal given situation, especially kids and adolescents, they have quite a bit of resiliency. Like they can get up in the morning, they're running late, their backpack breaks, they don't get breakfast, they get to school, they can't get their locker open, they get to class late, their teacher makes a big example out of them. And then they can go to lunch and just feel like happy, they're fine. Because they have a lot of resiliency. But as things like this happen, changes in our routine, especially changes in sleep, changes in diet, which I think are pretty rampant right now in households, it lowers our resiliency a lot. And so things that may not have normally frustrated your adolescent or your child might just send them over the edge. And so, you know, normally everything's fine, but this morning you ran out of Cheerios, and suddenly they're just on the floor screaming, and you're like, what is this? Whose child are you? And that has to do with the lowering of resiliency. It doesn't mean that you're a negative parent. It doesn't mean you don't understand your child, or you don't know who your child is anymore. It's just the resiliency is dropping as we change our routine.
Yeah, and I want to jump into kind of talk a little bit about the trauma piece there under sadness that you listed, Matt, Dr. Fuller, is when people think about trauma, sometimes they consider trauma as this huge event that maybe abuse or neglect or like a big car accident, but actually trauma can be any situation that kids or teens or adults don't know how to cope with. So it overwhelms their coping skills, and it ends up impacting them with certain trauma symptoms that we will discuss later a little bit. And I think it's important for parents to really watch for those signs and figure out if their kids may be showing those symptoms and they may need some additional help for them.
Great. Lastly, I want to say I'm seeing a lot of folks mentioning fear and anxiety. And of course, you know, a lot of this is fed, even though we're socially distant, we still get a fairly strong feed from social media. And you know, that's something that I think we as parents and as our communities in general really need to be attuned to, understanding what is truth, what is fact, what is something that we should be concerned about in social media. But I also think we also need to take a chance to check on our friends, our adult friends. You know, parents, they may be facing job challenges, they may be facing their own mental stress. You know, and putting people all together in your house and kind of saying, stay there. And, you know, that's just a contrived situation, a stressful situation, no matter how much you love someone, right? So this is just a situation that we, you know, you want to check in on each other from time to time. And I think we still have ways of doing that just by calling, social media, things of that nature. It's really important that we stress that no two people are the same. We are going to talk about some theories and some kind of strategies to help parents and communities and families deal with some of these new realities. But we want to underscore no two people are the same, and especially in times like these, children and adolescents, they progress in emotional states at different rates, different ways. Often what we conceptualize as a linear theory is not linear at all. It's cyclical and takes ebbs and flows, if you will. So we recognize that, children communicate their emotions through behaviors, and they may shut down. Parent check-ins could help with that. And so we're going to give you some of these strategies here in the next few slides. So Dr. Kay Sutherland, let me ask you, what can parents do to help their children cope with these new and temporary contexts?
So there's certain things that they can definitely do at home to help them out. And one of the things that they need to really do for sure is recognizing and verbalizing that this situation is stressful, this situation is impacting everyone. So not trying to hide it, kind of like you were saying, Dr. Fuller, and not thinking that if we don't talk about it, then it will just go away, because sometimes parents may feel like, okay, if we start the conversation, will that impact them more? But actually, it's quite the opposite for many kids and teens, that if you're hiding things from them, they can sense it, especially for kids. I can tell you, they can sense there's some like stress or negative feeling in the air, but if they cannot pinpoint what it is and why it's happening, sometimes they can make up their own stories about it. And believe me, those stories can be even scarier sometimes than what the reality is. So it is important to really recognize and verbalize what is going on and what that means for the family, what that means for the community. Another thing is emotional check-ins to see how the kids are doing. Because, a lot of parents are quote unquote stuck with their kids at home 24/7. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to talk about feelings and even modeling it to their kids, saying that, you know what, I've been really stressed out about just being stuck at home. I kind of miss being able to go to the store or do this and that I used to do. So how are you doing? What are your feelings about this? Because especially for parents who try to be strong all the time and just power through things, they may be worried about opening up about their own feelings, but then that role models their kids to hide it from others, right? So this is a really good time to role model feelings are okay, and feelings are okay to discuss and get out of your system. So just asking the kids how you're doing is a really great way to do this. And I'm going to leave model adaptability and flexibility to Dr. Banks, because I know she wants to talk about that a little bit. The developing a routine with moments of self-directed control for children. And this is true for every age group. If you don't have a schedule, if you don't have structure, you are going to start to lose it eventually, right? Because you're like, I have the whole day in my hands and I don't know what to do with it. And that is going to start causing stress for you and for your kids. So structuring the day, putting some kind of schedule in place. Even if it's not just, from 8 to 9, we eat breakfast, period. At 9, you need to be done with it. Not necessarily like that, but saying we wake up, we have breakfast together, then we go out for a walk. So having some kind of structure is going to help everyone in the family. And for yourself, your children, those around them, come grace, redefine standards to meet the moment. So again, talking about what our new normal is right now and what that looks like. And not necessarily letting your stress to take over the whole situation and put pressure on your family, and they feel like they cannot do anything because of the pressure of the stress, the heaviness of the stress. So just trying to use your own coping skills to cope with the situation and role model again that to your kids.
Yes, similar to what Dr. Kay Sullivan was just mentioning regarding modeling adaptability and flexibility, knowing that things are not going to go as streamlined as they used to be. I mean, even when we're in our respective places on a normal basis, the things do not go as streamlined. And so, similar to what Dr. Queso was talking about emotions, modeling, hey, you know what, we had maybe, have the schedule, and guess what, guys, something just happened, or, maybe someone hurt themselves, or, hey, there's maybe a show that everyone wants to watch. Okay, hey, let's change it up, and let's do that instead. Going back again to what Dr. Brown was saying, that also helps to model resiliency and coping, right? And helps children and adolescents know that it's okay if things don't happen as you think they're supposed to happen. We can be flexible, and we can return back to it.
I think that's one of the most important things parents can do right now, is to model some of the resiliency and coping. Your children need to see you, I think, modeling that coping skill and kind of rolling with the punches. That's what we call it in our family, just rolling with the punches. And, that's something, a skill that outside of a pandemic, your family needs to see you modeling. Especially now, they need to see this as well. A few other strategies that will continue here. I'll ask Dr. Brown, maybe jump in. What are some other strategies students can exhibit?
Well, the first thing we've kind of talked about a little bit is find that new routine. So I don't know if your Facebook or Twitter or anything like my Facebook, Twitter, but I've seen a lot of well-meaning schedules being thrown out there, like from 8 to 9 we do this, from 9 to 10 we do this. And you can feel, it's very easy for me to feel a certain sense of shame when I realize, yeah, we don't do any of that. But what we can do is we can provide some structure. Dr. Akai Sullivan had said, I think that we're bouncing around a little bit in the presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No problem. Dr. Akai Sullivan had said, you can have sort of an order you do things. One thing that we do in our house, we have 3 kids in our house. And so we have like a breakfast, sort of, that's the first thing we do. Then we jump into school. Now, we unsuccessfully tried to have like a set order in which we do things. And that wasn't going to happen. And so I reflected on what was going wrong. And I realized I really wasn't giving my kids any autonomy. I wasn't giving them any power in this situation where they already feel powerless. So what I did is I just created a checklist of things they needed to get done that day. And once they got done with the checklist, and they could do it in any order, as quickly or as slowly as they wanted, they were done. And that was it. But that provided the necessary structure while returning the power to them. And that was really helpful in our home. A few other things we can do is we can remind ourselves and our kids that it's okay to have fun. Sometimes we're trapped, we feel trapped in our homes. We have limited access to things that we enjoy, especially if we're hobby-oriented or sport-oriented people. If we've been a part of organizations, we're limited access to those. And so we can find ourselves not enjoying life in the way we used to. And so it's going to take a little creativity, but spend some time with your kids and adolescents brainstorming things that you would enjoy doing, that you would like to enjoy, and then make those a priority. And that's really bullet number 3 there, is remember that when we get through this, at the end of this tunnel of the coronavirus, COVID-19, honestly, no one's really going to remember that much about whether or not we did that assignment on Wednesday. But they are going to remember the feelings. They're going to remember some of the unique experiences that they had. They're going to remember the opportunities that we took as parents to connect with our kids. And so it can be a really powerful time to bring us together. Number 4 is limit unnecessary media intrusions. And since the way that a lot of homes are structuring their life, it's all media now, because that's our only access to the outside world. So maybe not all the time, and maybe just a few times, like Thursday night, we're just going to have a no media night, and we're just going to shut it down. I mean, I'm going to turn off my cell phone. I get a call, I don't know, it's going to voicemail. And we're going to play some games. We're going to play Sorry. And and we're going to continue that. And after we put the kids to bed, we're going to do that. My wife and I, we're going to leave the media off because it's going to help us disconnect. It's going to help our brains heal a little bit. And then number 5 is communicate. One thing that is really common, especially as kids get anxious, is to hear this question, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? And it can be our natural response because we're loving parents to try to solve that for them. You know, they're like, well, what if somebody gets the coronavirus in our house? And so we come up with this solution of what we will do. And then they come back with a different what if, and we come up with a solution. And they come back with a different what if, and we come back with a solution. And this escalates until people get pretty upset. And so one thing that can be really helpful when your child is feeling anxious, or your spouse is feeling anxious, or partner is feeling anxious, and they start with the what ifs or similar language, is to empathize. And empathize, the way I'm using the word, is just focus on the emotion that they're feeling. So what if someone in our house gets coronavirus? You're worried about the future. You're not sure what's going to happen. And then here's the key point of the empathy. Don't say anything after. Just let that hang there and stop talking. What if someone gets the coronavirus? You're worried about the future. Yeah, I understand that. That makes sense. And then just stop. And what will happen, and you can watch it, especially in kids, their brains will start turning. And they'll start coming up with a solution on their own. And that can be a very healing opportunity for them. All right.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Sorry, can I jump in really quick? I also want to emphasize that these are really great strategies, and you know, Dr. Brown did a really wonderful job explaining what people can do. And I also want to add to that the fact that some parents are extremely stressed out right now. Maybe they lost their jobs, maybe they had their own you know, office or workplaces that they are not able to continue working there, so they may go bankrupt. So there are lots of things that are happening in parents' lives right now that I don't want them to hear these things as, you know, just don't worry about anything and drop everything and have fun, because I know that that's not, you know, gonna happen, and that's not what we're trying to say here. I think in order for them to be able to do things like enjoying their times together with their families and playing and going out for a walk together, they need to first take care of their own emotional well-being. And to do that, I think, you know, there are different strategies they can use. Maybe they can talk to whoever is willing to listen, maybe their friends or family members, and kind of get some of those feelings out of their system by talking to those people about what stresses them out. Or there are some good apps that are for free that they can find on their phones, some mindfulness apps, or they can even find some YouTube videos about doing some relaxation techniques, because this is a situation that is very out of control for kids, teens, and adults. So if we cannot control it, the best thing we can do is to learn how to cope with those feelings so that we don't carry them around, and even you know, they can be contagious to our kids. So I think it is important that they do a lot of self-care so that they can in turn come back and do some fun stuff with their kids and be able to empathize with them and listen to them.
Great, excellent strategies. We also want to remind folks that in this time, as well as any time really, it's always imperative that if you need help, you get help. And so we wanted to offer, and in closing up, just some of the resources we see and some of the times at which you need to look for additional help. So I'm going to ask Dr. Akai Sullivan, let's talk about when do you see counseling and what resources are available?
Yes, this part is definitely very important for parents or any adults to consider when they're dealing with the virus at home, being stuck there, because we gave you some strategies about how to help your family and yourself, but sometimes it is too overwhelming, and no matter what you do, there is some leftover feelings that the people are not able to handle. For example, their kids still may be overly concerned and anxious after parents use those strategies with them, or they may be having sleeping issues, not being able to fall asleep at night because they're too anxious, or having nightmares several times during the night. They may eat less or more than usual. And I'm not talking about just a little bit less or a little bit more. It's something that is obvious to parents and consistent through the days. And some kids, especially younger ones, may regress back to the times that they're worried about being separated from their parents. I have kids, like clients who follow their parents around in the house because they're so anxious about something bad happening to them or their parents. They can, even though they're maybe 8, 9 years old, they cannot let it go and be in a separate room by themselves. And again, I mentioned this before, but fear of dying, fear of someone getting sick. I'm currently working with a couple of kiddos who are constantly asking their parents, am I okay? Are you okay? Are we gonna be okay? And their anxiety is so high about this that I believe that is the time for them to seek therapy, seek counseling. And these are some of the red flags that people can watch for and decide to go for counseling. And so this part is really important also because sometimes parents or people in general may think that if I cannot go see a counselor in person, then I don't think it's going to work. I mean, it's a weird concept for a lot of people. What does it look like to do virtual counseling or telecounseling? And I know that there are lots of mental health counselors and psychologists probably that are switching to telehealth at this time because of the concerns of spreading the virus. And I want to reassure people that these counselors, even though they may not be doing this previously, now they're getting trainings. Hopefully, I know a lot of them are at least, and they are actually having these discussions within themselves on Facebook groups or other social media, how to do things the best way they can. So there's a lot of effort on mental health professionals' side to learn how to do telecounseling, telemental health, and figure out best ways to help people. And actually, if people are concerned about their services not being covered, or when they seek counseling, that not being covered by insurance companies, because some companies may not cover telemental health. Now, our governor announced that there's an emergency rule that will remain in effect for up to 120 days. So during that time, if you have insurance and the counselor accepts that insurance and you do telecounseling, you can use your insurance. So you don't have to pay out of pocket, which is really important to know, because that may be a point where people decide not to seek counseling because they believe they're not covered. It is going to be covered for 120 days. And discuss this with your counselor, with your psychologist. Of course, they will help you out with this process. And how to search for a counselor or a psychologist or even a psychiatrist in this time when you're staying at home. There's Psychology Today website that I refer people to usually, because a lot of providers are on that website. They can go and check that website and see if I have this insurance, I have this age group of kids who is out there in my area. And it is really easy to use the website. And another resource that I want to talk about is we as Sam Houston State University Counseling Department have 2 clinics, one in Huntsville, one in the Woodlands. If you are within those areas, we have 2 clinics that are doing telecounseling as well. We just switched to that a few weeks ago after this whole thing happened and people started to stay at home. And we have master's level counseling students who see clients under supervision of a professor and supervision of a licensed professional counselor or a licensed marriage and family therapist. And those students can go online and do virtual counseling with you as long as we have availability. And the next slide has phone numbers for those clinics. So Matt, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. And also just keep in mind that we do have a number of local health, local to Montgomery County, local to Walker County health um, resources available. They are operating. And, you know, of course, Dr. Kay Sullivan said earlier, you know, the Counseling Center for Sam Houston, the Jack Staggs Counseling Center. There's a lot of resources, but also you can lean on each other, friends, relatives, take care of each other, look out for each other. This might be the time that, you know, that long lost relative, hey, I'm just calling to check in on you, seeing how you're doing. With that, I'm going to ask our panelists one last question each. Your parting piece of wisdom for anyone watching to help them get through the current coronavirus pandemic right now would be, Dr. Brown.
I would say give yourself grace. Give your children grace. This is an unprecedented time. We hear that word a lot, and that just means that it's unusual. It's nothing like this has ever happened. And so if you're not doing perfectly, if your kids aren't doing perfectly, that's to be expected. I don't know anybody that can be thrown in a brand new situation and do perfectly, or even pretty good. You know, survival is okay.
Thank you. Dr. Banks.
I would say a big thing we've been talking about is that kind of emotion coaching, in a sense of modeling variety of behaviors, even the negative ones, and helping the children to recognize that it's okay to feel that. I feel that too, and we're going to work through this together.
And Dr. Akai Sullivan.
Sorry, my baby's calling me on the background, so I'm a little distracted right now. But you know, like what is happening in here, things are not going to be perfect, and we all experience this working from home, especially, and just going with the flow as much as you can, because there's nothing else we can do. And giving yourself that kind of a flexibility and saying, you know what, my baby may be screaming on the background right now as we're recording this, but it's going to be okay, because there are things I cannot control, and I'm just going to work on letting go of that need at this time until things start to improve.
Great.
Dr. Fuller, can I mention one more thing?
Yes,
First, Dr. Akai Sullivan, I realized I was saying your name wrong. I wanted to mention that, and I do apologize, but I wanted to reiterate something else that I thought was really good that you said before, which is self-care for parents, right? Because we keep talking a lot about kids and making sure they're okay, which is important, but I wanted to kind of bounce back what you just said, a very good point of self-care for parents.
And great. Thank you, Dr. Banks. And thank you all to our panelists. My last piece of advice is that this too shall pass, and we will get through this. And I hope that today, hearing from our experts here at Sam Houston State, you've been lifted up and you've been given a few more strategies as to how you can help our community, our families, maybe even our elderly, and some of our other folks who need a little extra assistance in this time. If I or anyone in the Center for Assessment, Research, and Educational Safety can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is edsafety@shsu.edu. Again, to our panelists, thank you for taking time, and let's look forward to the future together.